Here we are with Overwatch This. I'm Jeff from the Overwatch team.
Hello and welcome to episode 29 of Overwatch This. I'm your host Phil in the same colour shirt as our Overwatch expert Ben.
Hello. We're now old enough to start getting really depressed about what happens next year.
I thought you were saying we're now old enough to dress ourselves and this is what happens.
That too. Since this morning I've been able to dress myself and I'm already making a horrible mess of it.
It's once and never again. Lots to talk about today, starting with some interesting tie-ins going on in the world of Heroes of the Storm, which is Blizzard's MOBA, like proper MOBA, not like a shooter MOBA like this.
Where they've actually gone, oh, we'll just keep the lanes and stuff rather than putting it in first person.
It's like a MOBA. So there's some interesting stuff happening there and some spillover of content between the two.
Yes.
And the idea is that they want you to play Heroes of the Storm.
Blizzard really want you to play Heroes of the Storm, but now I can actually recommend that. I think 2 or 3 years ago that wouldn't be the case, but it's a good game. It's an enjoyable game. But yeah, so if you go and play Heroes of the Storm over the course of the next 4 weeks, you need to play with some friends, and basically, like, people who are on your friends list, they don't actually have to be friends of yours. You can just find people online if you wish. I'm sure various subreddits will be running. Please be my friend. Please be my friend for this 4-week period so that I can get these goodies. You play 5 matches this week, 5 matches next week, 5 matches the week after that, finally 5 matches the week after that, and you get various rewards. The most notable of which are this week you can get the only Genji skin again, which they did for the last Heroes of the Storm thing.
Good skin.
Next week they're offering the Officer D.va skin, which is
great skin.
Arguably one of the best skins I've ever done.
Not quite as good as Dad Bjorn, I don't think.
I put it in that
there,
in that tier of like Dad Bjorn, Witch Mercy, and now Officer D.va. Week after that, it's just like some sprays and stuff. Less impressive, I would say.
Yeah.
And then the 4th week, if you do it, you get 10 loot boxes in Heroes of the Storm's new system and 10 loot boxes over in Overwatch as well, which I'm sure everybody will be very happy about. What you can do is you can just leave this until the 4th week, and then as long as you play 20 matches that week, you will get all of these rewards.
Yeah.
So it's like they're unlocking each week, but they are still like relevant. It's just you have to play 5 and then 5 and then 5 and then 5, no matter when you start doing it. And if you forget, you won't get anything. There's a load of other stuff going on with Heroes of the Storm. All of that is on our website, and this is sadly not Heroes This, so we won't go too deep into that. But there is also a new cinematic, which features Genji and Diablo. So if you're a big fan of Diablo, it's worth watching. And it also has D.va coming at the end to announce her as the next the next Heroes of the Storm hero. We don't really know anything about her. They haven't actually said like here are her abilities or any of her talents or how exactly she's going to work. But you can work some of it out from the cinematic. It looks like she'll be able to kind of move and shoot like Tracer can, and no doubt she'll have the whole kind of getting in and out of the mech stuff. That'll be part of her gameplay as well.
You would have thought.
Yeah.
Did you say we have to play 20 games
20.
of Hero of the Storm?
Hero of the Storm.
In the
Hero.
next 4 weeks. That seems like quite a lot.
Well, it's one a work day.
Yeah.
And Heroes of the Storm matches are perfect for lunch times.
I see.
And indeed, I expect this is the plan for several people who work at this company.
Yeah. So the equation really is how
on
much do you like that D.va skin?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's only 10 to get the D.va skin.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a drop off. I mean, I suppose the 10.
Well, the 10 loot boxes are really worth it. It's the 3rd week, which is the problem. But there's some stuff in Heroes for that as well. Either way, if you play Heroes of the Storm, I'm sure you'll get it anyway. And do go give it a shot and try it out if you want that stuff. What there isn't is any indication of PTR, which is what we've kind of been expecting to pop up at some point soon.
Yeah.
We spoke about it. I can't remember if it was last week or the week before. We said we're kind of expecting this to start getting announced soon. They haven't said anything. They will need to have a patch to add Officer D.va to Overwatch.
Yeah.
And it would need to be next week. It would need to be presumably on the Tuesday, which I'm fairly sure that's when Uprising ends. And that's when I would have expected there to be another patch.
Yeah.
It's possible that there is another patch in development that is just cosmetics. And therefore doesn't need any testing, or maybe it's like cosmetics and a few bug fixes, and a bunch of stuff that they don't really need to kind of send out to the wider world. But it also might just be a small patch that's just like, okay, the Officer D.va skin is now in the game. So we'll see what happens with that next Tuesday. We would still expect kind of patch 1.11 to enter the PTR at some point soon.
but maybe that won't be till after all of that stuff has gone to live, so next week or the week after.
Now, Ben, your friend and mine, more your friend really, Jeff Kaplan.
I don't know if good buddy is quite how I'd describe man I've met for 40 minutes. But yes.
Man you've met for 14 minutes. Jeff Kaplan has been on the official Overwatch forums to let people know a little bit more about what's going on with maps.
Yeah.
Obviously, maps have seen a bit less development, it'd be fair to say.
Yeah, there hasn't been kind of major introductions, perhaps as many as people were thinking there was going to be.
So Jeff's clearing a bit of that up. So there are a total of 6 maps in development at this point, all of which Blizzard are aiming to release in 2017.
Yeah, so these are the ones that they are pretty sure they will be able to release. You know, no doubt they probably have 25 maps that they're, you know, at some point in the process.
Yeah.
But these are the ones that basically they're ready to start making art for.
Maybe playing a few of the secret ones in lunchtimes over at Blizzard HQ.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so 3 standard maps and 3 non-standard maps.
Yeah.
That's what we know so far, so that's nice of Jeff to
let everybody know.
To be in touch with us via the Overwatch official forums.
Yeah.
So what are they? How is it all going to break down? What are they going to be, Ben?
So the standard maps, that means stuff that can be added to quick play, can be added to competitive mode. So at the moment, what we know of that is control maps, capture point maps, payload maps, and hybrid maps. There are 3 of them. That's pretty much all we know there. The non-standard maps is much harder to guess. That's stuff like the 1v1 and 3v3 arena, stuff like the Junkenstein's Revenge, like mini-map that they made, as well as, I guess, maybe the Uprising version of King's Row. Maybe you would count that as a non-standard map. I don't know whether he is or not. That's kind of more of a map variation, I suppose. So yeah, that's the split there. As far as the standard maps go, I would expect at least one of them to be a control map. I think these are a lot easier for them to make. Basically, and I mean, it's all relative. Making maps is not easy. Game development is not easy, but they're symmetrical. You know, it's 3 symmetrical points.
Yeah.
They're smaller because each of those points, I would say, maybe if you put them all next to each other, they add up to one big map. But because they're symmetrical, and B, they only have to contain a certain amount of content each, you have a lot more like automatic bits. It's like, well, we need to have 6 spawn room points, and you know, rather than 2, so that takes up a certain percentage of that whole map, as it were. They also all center around a single bit, so the complexity of them is quite focused on those 3 points. So the outsides of those, there's quite a lot of room, A, for kind of, you know, story stuff and less, you know, gameplay related elements, and also they can make those quite simple if they need to. So I would expect at least 1, maybe 2 of these to be control. Just because, they're easier to make. I doubt all 3 of them are, because, you know, they'll want to make payload maps and other bits, and we'll get on to some of that as we go.
So of those 6 new maps, how many new locations, if any, do you think we'll be getting?
Well, that's the question. So the thing about that maps lets them do is explore different areas of the world, particularly areas that they maybe don't have heroes from or haven't done stuff in the lore with properly yet. One particularly easy one is Switzerland. This is where Overwatch HQ was in the storyline. It got blown up when there was the whole kind of infighting thing. There was a glimpse of the non-blown up version in the Uprising comic. That was the first time we'd seen it.
Right.
There's also, you know, there's a big story to tell there about how Overwatch collapsed and the whole kind of Blackwatch thing, and what happened with Reaper and Soldier 76 and why everything went wrong, as well as how Reaper ended up coming back to life and that sort of thing. That could end up being a non-standard map, because that story is quite important. Probably one of the most important stories they have so far teased to tell. And therefore, you know, they'd want to build like a proper little story thing. Like
it might be an event again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it might be an event-specific map. But I expect either a destroyed version of it or a past version of it with the HQ would make a very good map, just because it's so central to the plot of the game. And so I think that will be a map that we see. Whether it is even going to be this year is the question there. Like, that's definitely going to happen. It's just whether it's, you know, one of this 6 or whether it's one of next year's, however many maps they make then.
Switzerland presents an interesting design quandary, because when I think of Switzerland, I've been to Switzerland.
Okay.
It's mountainous.
I've not been to Switzerland, so
there are lakes.
Yeah, it's
Can you turn
skiing.
mountains and lakes into sort of a shooty?
Yeah, and as far as
kind of tricky to characterise is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and as far as kind of international understanding of what Switzerland is about, I think people think of Swiss banks. That's not really something that, you know, you can turn into an Overwatch map.
Yeah.
And that's about it. You know, neutrality in terms of, you know, space on the world stage over the past 100 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is quite difficult to characterise. And a lot of this stuff does come down to caricatures. and yeah, so I do think that would be a challenge.
Maybe it'll be a control point map in which all the control zones remain neutral, no matter what you do.
You can't capture them. You just have to stay around and drink some tea, I suppose.
And that's why I don't work at Blizzard.
Yeah.
There are other potential locations that we were chatting about earlier on, though. Why don't you take us through them, Ben?
Yeah. So there's Australia as well. This is the only continent, like Oceania is the only continent that doesn't have any maps on it at all, including Antarctica, because there is an Antarctica map that was released as part of the arena thing. Roadhog and Junkrat come from Australia. There's this whole story about the outback and how it got like blown up when there was part of the robot uprising stuff. They destroyed like a power plant that was creating the robots, and that irradiated the whole area, and that's why Roadhog is such a nasty man, essentially. So, yeah, there's a whole story to tell there, and also they haven't done anything on that continent at all.
Yeah.
So I would expect to see something there. Again, that could be a story-based map, but I would expect that they haven't had any maps there at all yet. They haven't really explored what happened with that continent properly in game. They want to have at least one map on that area.
And from a design perspective, there's a lot more you can do with Australia to make it look like Australia. You've got rainforest, you've got the desert of particular sort of orangey red sand.
I would expect
coastlines and cities. And
the only worry there would be making it very similar to Route 66, which is a desert map. And as the main kind of story beats that have happened in Australia so far have been in the outback and an irradiated outback at that, there would be a worry there. But obviously, there's a lot of stuff they can do to make it distinct from Southern America.
Yeah, so if you see the Blizzard guys playing a lot of Forza Horizon 3,
you know what's
going on.
That's the reason.
Yeah.
Speaking of America, there actually isn't that many maps in there isn't any in Eastern and Northern North America. There's none in Canada. There's none around New York. And while Overwatch is an internationally focused game, I would still have expected, just thinking off the top of my head, I'd be like, well, I bet the most number of maps are probably in North America, just because that's where Blizzard are. But there's actually only two. There's Route 66 and there's Hollywood. Hollywood is in California, and Route 66 is at least based around kind of the Southern America type area. I think New York is maybe a city that people would like to see, what's happened with that in the Overwatch universe. Maybe it's destroyed, maybe it's, more run down. We've already had kind of technological paradises and that sort of thing. They've placed them in Africa and the Middle East. So it would be interesting to see, what's happened to a place the size of New York. And also, somewhere like Washington, D.C., places that they can have landmarks that people will recognise, but that we don't know anything about really what their status is in the Overwatch universe.
They could kill a few birds with one stone by sending it in Toronto.
Yeah,
tick off the Canada box, tick off the East Coast box, everything like that. And also, we've seen New York so many times, in so many games.
Well, it'd be interesting to see their interpretation of it, right? But I do agree, it is quite standard at that point. Yeah,
there's only so many skyscrapers with leaves growing off them and weeds all over them that you can bear, really. But time will tell. I'm sure Blizzard would do a better job than most. Anyway,
well, yeah, probably. So that's places we haven't seen, but there's also stories to be told. And as we were talking about a little bit with that, the Fall of Overwatch is a really good one there. This is stuff for I would say, the non-competitive maps, the ones that would be either co-op maps or something else along those lines. We don't know anything about the Fall of Overwatch at all. Some sort of Black Watch event was very heavily teased by Michael Chu when we were speaking to him last week, as well as kind of it's just something that's been talked about a lot. I would expect that might be a way off, though, as we were saying earlier, with the idea of setting a map during the Overwatch fall and putting a map on that area of Switzerland. This is a story that they've been teasing for a long time, and that telling it will remove a certain amount of mystery from the universe. And that means you need to have stories in place or mysteries in place that will keep people interested, just in terms of wanting to have a long-running storyline. There's also the various Omnic Crisis. We've seen Uprising now, which is part of the London Crisis, but there's been a lot of stuff about Russia. That's kind of meant to be where the actual war took place. Like everywhere else, it was either kind of a bit of a massacre on the side of the robots, or it was more kind of terrorist type actions like we see in the Uprising, where it's people fighting in cities and like little areas being taken over by guerrilla troops, not like a full-on assault type deal. Which is what Russia was in terms of the law. And then of course there's Doomfist and other upcoming heroes. And I doubt we're now ever going to see a hero come out that doesn't have some sort of in-game representation. It's very weird that they've done that in the past. It's strange that there wasn't an Orisa brawl of some kind, or she got that bit on Numbani where they changed the entrance, the airport entrance, and I expect we'll see that sort of thing expanded. So particularly with Doomfist, because he's such a big deal, I think will
is
definitely
now,
yeah exactly.
becoming the Half-Life 3 of Overwatch.
Yeah, exactly. And now now that that's happening and people are that interested in him, I think it'd be very weird for us to see him come out without any kind of big in-game type map going on. And I would very much expect that's one of the things that they have in dev at the moment.
Right, so the other thing to think about when it comes to new maps, we've talked about what the story needs and where, particular characters and bits of the Overwatch history might be expanded, but there's also the element of the game
Yes.
and what elements of gameplay might be improved upon with new maps. So something we were talking about earlier on is verticality, for example, or what game designers would call verticality. Just some ledges, really.
Just a few couple of ledges, some stairs, an odd
and,
lift.
Yeah, and that sort of presents different approaches for different characters. Like a bunch of characters already have a load of verticality already,
like built into their kit.
Yeah, like Lucio is basically just a flying man at this point.
And Farah is literally a flying woman. So
yeah. Whereas, as you were saying, Zarya
can't really. Yeah, she can jump
jogging.
Using, yeah, she likes walking around. She likes being on the ground.
Yeah, so that would be something that I'd like to see. That'd be a bit interesting. And one of these 6 maps is like a multi-tiered thing where some of the characters could expand on their advantages that they have already. I don't know how you would balance that, but again, that's why I don't work at Blizzard. That's my catchphrase.
You can just make suggestions, and they can do the hard part.
Yeah, sure.
That's the great thing about being on this side of the camera.
Easy. Yeah. What would you like to see?
Well, so, I mean, the thing about the verticality is interesting because they try to do some of this with Oasis, with the jump pad. And the thing you need to know about Blizzard is they innovate incredibly slowly, sometimes not at all. What they're famous for and how they've made so much money over the years, particularly with World of Warcraft, is they take ideas that other people have had and then they improve on those. They don't really come up with their own unique ones very often.
A team of lawyers has just amassed outside this room and are all shaking their heads in unison.
It's a very well accepted thing. Like, Overwatch is TF2 with like other games kind of bolted onto TF2, right?
Yeah, right.
World of Warcraft is EverQuest developed to a point of being much better. Like, it is a much improved version of that game. StarCraft was a much improved version of Command and Conquer. You can kind of keep going with that sort of thing. So what I expect to see is something like the jump pad used in another map, more of it, not just one like it is on Oasis. And then more unique elements like that, where it's like, okay, here's something that you haven't seen in the game before and is only on this map to be developed and experimented with. And I expect they've done, a dozen experiments with that sort of thing. Maybe a teleport of some kind, or some way that, basically ways to move around a map or ways to have cover, maybe bits where you're invulnerable, but you can shoot out, but they can't shoot in, that sort of thing, right? I expect they've experimented with that, and I expect the reason we haven't seen more of these is a lot of them don't work. And designing them and then putting art into them is very, very challenging for that sort of thing. But I do expect we will see more of that as we go forward. And verticality, is part of that. And if they're adding more jump pads, I can imagine that is a way to balance that. Where so Farah can't just fly up to whatever ledge that's been added to this map with maybe two capture points that are above each other or whatever. But Zarya has to go and get the lift, as it were. Has to go up the stairs, has to get the jump pad. I expect to see more of that sort of thing. I think something else the game needs is another arena map, like the Antarctica one. I think if they want to expand 3v3 and 1v1 into maybe not fully supported game modes with $1,000 tournaments and all the rest of it, but something that they've said is that they've seen a lot of support for it, and they think it's a fun way to play, and therefore would like to support it more. I think with just that one map, it would get stale quite quickly. I don't know how quick those are to make, certainly quicker than an entire normal map. Whether they could release 2 of those maybe, and then you'd have a pool of 3, and then maybe they could kind of leave it alone for a year or so. I would expect to see that. And like I said, that is a lot quicker than making even a co-op map, because a co-op map needs all the additional elements of like how do the enemies work, how are you going to do the AI, what do you need to put there in terms of the story and in terms of coding and that sort of thing. And then finally, I expect what we won't see is more assault maps, more capture point maps, because they're unpopular. People don't like them as much as Payload. Honestly, I personally don't think they're as much fun as Payload. I think one of the best things TF2 ever did was adding the Payload modes.
It's mad to remember that
it didn't launch with it. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Gold Rush came out, and that was brilliant. And then Blackwater Basin came out, and that's
it was all
just
anyone played.
Yeah,
it
exactly.
Just became Gold Rush the game.
Yeah, and I think it is better. I think it takes the best bits of a capture point map, which is you need the attacking team needs to be in one space, but making it move makes it less kind of boring and kind of flips the attack defense stuff on its head, because you're defending where the payload is if you're defense team, but then when the attackers get on it, they are moving it while defending it, and that's, you know, a whole different ball game there.
Yeah.
And it's also been competitively difficult for them to balance assault maps. There's all this stuff with draws that we've been going on about for, I don't know, months now, has all been to do with 2CP maps, and how they're not very balanced and they're not very fun to play, and they lead to these draws that people don't like. So I expect while I'm sure they will make more 2CP maps, because it is an element of the game that you know, does work and has certain advantages, I would expect to see them done less than payload and hybrid maps.
All right, me and Ben are off to change our shirts now. Thank you very much for watching another episode of Overwatch This. We will catch you next time when we'll be talking about presumably something on the PTR.
Hopefully so, otherwise we're going to run out of topics and we're going to have to talk about esports streamers.
Maybe we'll end up talking about Heroes of the Storm as well, because it sounds like we're going to have to play some of that as well.
Definitely.
Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more like this and other lovely games content. We'll catch you next time.